You know what's funny about marriage? Sometimes your wife hands you the keys to your freedom without even realizing it. And that's exactly what happened when she looked at my Bible sitting on the nightstand and decided I needed to be taught a lesson about organization. It was a regular Wednesday evening when I came home from work, loosened my tie, and placed my Bible on the nightstand like I'd done countless times before. I'd been reading a chapter each night. Nothing dramatic, just part of my routine. But apparently, this simple act violated some sacred organizational system she'd established in our bedroom. "That's it," she announced, hands on her hips, staring at the Bible like it was some kind of personal insult. "You're not allowed in our bedroom until you learn how to be organized." I looked at her, then at the Bible, then back at her. "Because of this? Because you clearly don't respect my systems. Everything has a place, and that doesn't belong there. You need to learn proper organization before you can share this space with me again." Now, most guys might have argued, might have pointed out that it's technically our bedroom, that we're married, that banning your husband from his own sleeping space over a Bible is pretty extreme. But here's the thing. I could see an opportunity when it presented itself. "You're absolutely right," I said, picking up the Bible. "I clearly need to work on my organizational skills." She blinked, obviously expecting more of a fight. "Good. I'm glad you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly. In fact, I think you've made an excellent point about having proper systems and designated spaces for everything." The confusion on her face was almost comical. She'd geared up for battle, and I'd just surrendered. Or so she thought. That night, I grabbed a pillow and headed to the couch. But as I lay there looking up at the ceiling, my mind started working. She wanted organization. She wanted systems. She wanted everything in its proper place. Fine. I could give her exactly what she asked for. The next morning, while she was at her yoga class, I took a walk around our property. The garage had always been just storage, boxes of old stuff, holiday decorations, the usual suburban clutter. But it was spacious, 20 by 20 feet of potential. And technically, it was part of the house we rented, which meant I had just as much right to use it as she did. I started making mental notes. The electrical was already there, outlets along the walls, overhead lighting. The concrete floor was in decent shape. With some insulation, drywall, and proper flooring, this space could become something special. By Sunday, I'd drawn up basic plans on napkins during lunch. Nothing fancy, just practical layouts for what I was starting to think of as my organizational project. She noticed me sketching but didn't ask questions. Why would she? As far as she knew, I was learning my lesson about organization. "How's your progress going?" she asked during dinner. That satisfied tone people use when they think they've made their point. "Really well, actually. I'm starting to understand the importance of having dedicated spaces for different activities." "See? I knew you'd come around once you applied yourself." If only she knew what I was actually applying myself to. Monday after work, I stopped by Home Depot. Started small, just measuring tape, a level, some basic tools. The guy in the lumber section was helpful when I explained I was finishing a garage space. Gave me some good advice about insulation and moisture barriers. Tuesday, I made another trip, this time for insulation materials and vapor barriers. The project was starting to take shape in my mind. Not just a quick fix or temporary space, something permanent, something that would make a statement. She barely looked up from her tablet when I carried supplies through the house to the garage. Still working on that organization project? Making excellent progress. Really starting to understand the value of proper systems. And I was. Just not the kind of system she had in mind. By Thursday, I had the garage cleared out completely. All her storage boxes, the Christmas decorations, old college textbooks, seasonal clothes. I neatly relocated to the basement. Everything organized, everything in its proper place. She would have been proud if she'd bothered to check. Friday evening, I started installing insulation between the wall studs. The physical work felt good after sitting at a desk all day. Each piece of insulation I stapled in place felt like progress towards something bigger than just a room renovation. "You're spending a lot of time in the garage," she observed when I came in for dinner. "Organization is serious business." "You were right about that." She smiled, that smug smile people get when they think they've successfully trained someone. Little did she know, the only thing being trained was my patience. Weekend came, and I really got to work. Hung drywall, taped joints, applied texture. The transformation was already impressive. What had been a cluttered storage space was becoming something that actually looked like living space. By the end of week 2, I had the walls painted a deep blue-gray, and was pricing flooring options. She'd asked once or twice about the noise coming from the garage, but I explained it was part of the organizational process, getting everything properly arranged. "When do you think you'll be ready to come back to the bedroom?" she asked Sunday night. I looked at her seriously. "When I'm confident I truly understand proper organization. I don't want to disappoint you again." "Good. I'm glad you're taking this seriously." Oh, I was taking it seriously. More seriously than she could possibly imagine. Week 3 is when things really started getting interesting. I'd moved past the basic construction phase and into what I like to think of as the engineering phase. The garage was no longer recognizable as the cluttered storage space it had been. I installed luxury vinyl plank flooring, the kind that looks like real hardwood but can handle temperature changes and moisture. Cost me about $600, but it was worth every penny. The transformation from cold concrete to warm, rich-looking wood floors changed the entire feel of the space. She walked through once while I was installing the baseboards. "Wow, this looks professional." "Organization requires proper infrastructure," I replied, not looking up from my work. "Can't have a good system without a solid foundation, right?" "Well, it certainly looks like you're learning." If she only knew what I was really learning. Mainly that I should have done this years ago. The electrical work came next. I hired a licensed electrician. No point in burning the house down over pride. But I worked alongside him, learning how to add outlets, install overhead recessed lighting, and set up a separate circuit for what would eventually become my entertainment center. "Nice setup," the electrician commented as he worked. "Your wife gonna love this new workshop space." "Something like that," I said. By the 4th week, I was ready for the fun part. I'd researched HVAC systems and decided on a mini split unit. Heating and cooling controlled by remote. The installation was more complex than I'd expected, but YouTube University came through again. She noticed the outdoor unit when she was watering her flowers. "What's that thing?" "Climate control. Proper organization requires consistent environmental conditions." She just nodded and went back to her flowers. Amazing how people hear what they want to hear. The mini split was a game changer. Suddenly, the garage maintained a perfect 72 degrees year-round. I could work out there in comfort, regardless of the weather outside. Week 5 brought the first major furniture delivery. I'd ordered online and had everything shipped to my office, then loaded it into my truck after work. A king-size bed frame, mattress, and box spring. Top quality stuff. The kind I'd been wanting for our bedroom, but she'd always vetoed as unnecessary expense. Getting a king mattress through the garage door solo was an adventure, but I managed. Set it up in the far corner where it wouldn't be immediately visible from the doorway. Not that she was spending much time checking on my progress anyway. The bed looked incredible in the space. Plenty of room to stretch out, firm support, none of the motion transfer issues we'd been dealing with on our old queen mattress. I tested it out that first night and slept better than I had in months. She asked the next morning how the couch was working out. "Actually, I've upgraded my sleeping arrangements as part of the organizational process." "Oh good, air mattress." Something like that. Week 6 was electronics week. I'd been saving for months without really knowing what for, but it turned out this project was exactly what I'd been saving for. 75-inch smart TV, soundbar, gaming console, and a compact refrigerator. All delivered to the office and transported after hours. The TV installation required some wall reinforcement, but I'd planned for that during the framing phase. Mounted at the perfect height for viewing from both the bed and what would soon become the seating area. She heard the sound system during testing and came out to investigate. That's quite a lot of noise for an organization project. Quality control testing. Making sure all systems function properly before final implementation. Final implementation of what exactly? My new organizational system. You'll see when it's complete. I could tell she was curious, but her pride wouldn't let her admit she'd been wrong about whatever she thought I was doing out there. The mini fridge was the detail that really made it feel like a complete space. Stocked it with craft beer, energy drinks, and snacks. Having everything I needed within arm's reach was luxury I hadn't realized I'd been missing. By the end of week 6, I had what was essentially a studio apartment. Bedroom, entertainment area, climate control, and refreshments. All I was missing was proper seating and some personal touches. That's when I started planning phase 2. She'd gotten used to having the main bedroom to herself. Spread her stuff across both nightstands, took up the entire closet, had her yoga mat permanently rolled out on my side of the bed. She was enjoying her space, and I was enjoying mine. The difference was, she thought this arrangement was temporary. I was beginning to realize it might be the best thing that had ever happened to our marriage, or what was left of it. Week 7 brought the leather sectional sofa, L-shaped, power recliners, cup holders, USB charging ports. The kind of furniture she'd always said was too masculine for the house. Well, this wasn't the house. This was my space, and it was going to reflect my preferences. The delivery guys were impressed. Man cave. Something like that. They helped me position it perfectly, facing the TV at the optimal viewing angle, close enough to the mini fridge for convenience. The sectional completed the living room feel of the space. That evening, I invited my neighbor over to see the progress. We'd always gotten along well, but I hadn't socialized much lately. She'd had opinions about him being too loud and inappropriate company. Holy hell, he said when he saw the setup. This is incredible. Your wife kick you out or something. Temporary arrangement while I work on organizational skills. He laughed. Well, if this is punishment, sign me up. This is nicer than my actual bedroom. We had a couple beers, watched some sports, and for the first time in months, I remembered what it felt like to relax in my own space. No walking on eggshells, no worrying about putting something in the wrong place, no judgment about my choice of entertainment. Just me, my space, and the freedom to enjoy it however I wanted. Around 10 o'clock, I heard her heels clicking across the kitchen floor above us. She was checking to see what we were doing. The sound of men laughing probably bothered her more than she'd care to admit. Better head home, my neighbor said. But seriously, this is amazing. You should have people over more often. After he left, I sat in my recliner, remote in hand, beer within reach, and realized something important. I wasn't missing the bedroom at all. In fact, I was starting to prefer this arrangement. The question was, what was I going to do about that? Week 8 was when I stopped calling it a project and started calling it home. The space had evolved beyond anything I'd originally imagined. What started as a response to her organizational ultimatum had become something that reflected who I actually was, rather than who she thought I should be. I added a coffee station in the corner, single-serve machine, grinder, and a selection of beans I'd been wanting to try, but she'd always dismissed as too expensive for coffee. Turns out when you're making decisions for yourself, you can justify spending $12 on premium beans that actually taste like something. The morning routine in my new space was incredible. Wake up in a bed that was actually comfortable, make coffee that didn't taste like water, and start the day without immediately walking into someone's mood or judgment about how I'd arranged my pillow the wrong way. She noticed I wasn't coming into the kitchen for morning coffee anymore. Where are you getting your caffeine? Part of the new organizational system. Everything has its designated place and purpose. You bought another coffee maker? Efficiency optimization. She looked annoyed but couldn't really argue with efficiency. The Workspace edition came next. A proper desk, ergonomic chair, and good lighting. I'd been working from home 2 days a week, but always had to negotiate space at the kitchen table or listen to her conference calls bleeding through the thin walls. Now I had a dedicated office area that was actually quiet. My productivity shot through the roof. No interruptions about lunch plans or honey-do lists. No background commentary about my work calls. Just focus and the ability to actually get things done. The gym area was my favorite addition. Nothing fancy, adjustable dumbbells, a bench, pull-up bar mounted in the doorway. But having workout equipment that I could use anytime without coordinating schedules or listening to complaints about the noise was liberating. She'd always had opinions about my workout routines. Too early, too loud, too much space taken up in the house. Now I could lift at 6 in the morning or 11 at night without affecting anyone else's schedule. Week 9 brought the entertainment upgrades. Gaming setup, streaming services, sound system calibrated for optimal bass response. The kind of audio setup she'd always vetoed as unnecessary and disruptive to the neighbors. I tested it out with an action movie Friday night. The sound quality was incredible. Every explosion, every soundtrack detail, crystal clear without bothering anyone in the main house. Perfect isolation. That's when my brother called. Haven't heard from you in months. You still alive over there? Very much alive. Actually, things are pretty good right now. Really? Last time we talked, you sounded stressed about the usual domestic drama. Situations improved significantly. Good to hear. We should hang out sometime. I know she's not my biggest fan, but maybe we could grab beers or something. That hit me harder than I expected. When was the last time I'd hung out with my brother? Or any of my friends, for that matter? Every invitation had been met with some reason why it wasn't convenient or appropriate. Work event conflicts, social obligations she'd committed us to, or just general disapproval of my choice and company. Actually, why don't you come over Saturday? I've got a setup now that's perfect for hanging out. She okay with that? I've got my own space, completely separate from hers. Saturday afternoon, my brother showed up with a 12-pack and skeptical expectations. His expression when he saw the garage was exactly what I'd hoped for. What the hell is this place? My organizational project. This is an organization. This is a luxury apartment. How did you pull this off? I gave him the full tour, the climate control, entertainment system, sleeping area, workspace, even the mini gym. His reaction was getting more amazed by the minute. This is incredible. You've basically built your own house inside the house. That's the idea. We spent the afternoon watching football, drinking good beer, and talking about everything we hadn't been able to discuss in months. No time limits, no disapproving looks from the doorway, no subtle comments about how we were being too loud or inappropriate. I forgot how much fun you are when you're not stressed, he said during halftime. I forgot I used to be fun. Around 6, a couple of my old college buddies stopped by. I'd texted them earlier, figuring if I was going to have company, might as well make it a proper gathering. They brought pizza and more beer, and the place really came alive. This is amazing, one of them said, checking out the TV setup. Why didn't you do this years ago? Didn't have the motivation. We played some video games, shared stories about work and life, and I realized how much I'd missed having male friendships that weren't filtered through someone else's approval process. The conversation flowed naturally, the laughter was genuine, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Around 8, I heard footsteps on the stairs above us. She was moving around the house, probably wondering about all the voices and laughter coming from the garage. The sound system was well insulated, but male bonding has its own volume level. She know you're throwing a party? My brother asked. She knows I'm working on my organizational skills. That got a big laugh from everyone. By 9, we'd moved into serious conversation territory. Work frustrations, relationship observations, future plans. The kind of discussions you can only have with people who've known you long enough to call you on your nonsense. You seem different, one friend observed. More relaxed. More like the guy we knew in college. I'm rediscovering some things about myself. Good for you. We were starting to worry you disappeared entirely. That comment stuck with me after everyone left. Had I disappeared? Had I become so focused on avoiding conflict and meeting someone else's standards that I'd lost track of who I actually was? Sunday morning, I made coffee in my space, worked out without checking the time or noise level, and spent a couple hours just enjoying the quiet. No agenda, no obligations, no one else's priorities demanding attention. She knocked on the garage door around noon. Can we talk? Sure. What's up? About last night. That was a lot of people. A few friends stopped by. It was loud. The neighbors probably heard. The space is well insulated. And it wasn't that late. It's just, this is supposed to be about organization, not entertaining. I looked at her standing in the doorway of my perfectly organized, climate-controlled, efficiently designed space. Every tool had its place. Every electronic device was properly arranged. Every piece of furniture served its intended purpose. This is extremely well organized. You know what I mean. Actually, I don't. You wanted me to learn about proper organization and designated spaces. Mission accomplished. She looked around, taking in the full scope of what I'd built. I could see her processing the reality that this wasn't temporary, wasn't a lesson being learned, and definitely wasn't going to result in me begging to come back to the bedroom. How long are you planning to stay out here? As long as it takes to maintain proper organizational standards. And how long is that? I settled back into my recliner, reached for my coffee, and gave her the most honest answer I could. I'm not sure I ever want to go back. Week 10 brought the regular Friday night gathering that nobody had officially planned, but somehow everyone expected. My garage had become the default hangout spot for guys who'd been scattered to the wind by domestic obligations and social restrictions. Tonight was particularly good. 5 of us total, my brother, 2 college friends, and my neighbor. We had takeout from 3 different restaurants because nobody could agree on cuisine, craft beer from a local brewery, and a playoff basketball game on the big screen. This is better than any sports bar, my neighbor said, settling into the sectional with his second beer. No crowds, no overpriced drinks, perfect temperature control, and no judgment about how loud we cheer, added my college roommate. That got everyone laughing because we'd all been there. The gradual reduction of enthusiasm, the constant awareness of volume levels, the feeling like you were apologizing for existing in your own space. Remember when we used to just hang out without planning 3 weeks in advance? My brother asked. Remember when we didn't need permission to order pizza? Remember when we could watch an entire game without commentary about how sports are a waste of time? The conversation was hitting that comfortable zone where everyone could be honest about their frustrations without feeling like they were betraying anyone. Just guys talking about guy stuff without filtering every comment through someone else's sensitivities. During halftime, my college friend brought up the elephant in the room. So what's the deal with this setup? Are you permanently out here now? She kicked me out of the bedroom for leaving a book on the nightstand. I explained. Said I needed to learn about organization before I could share space with her again. A book. Bible, actually. Apparently, it violated her organizational system. The silence that followed was loaded. Everyone processing the absurdity of being banished from your own bedroom over a book placement. So instead of learning her system, you built your own kingdom, my neighbor summarized. Exactly. And she's okay with this? She thinks I'm learning a lesson about organization, which, technically, I am. That brought the biggest laugh of the night. The idea that the lesson being learned was completely different from the lesson being taught struck everyone as hilarious. This is the best organizational system I've ever seen, my brother said, gesturing at the entertainment setup. Everything a man needs, perfectly arranged for maximum comfort and efficiency. No kidding. I'm taking notes for my own organizational improvements. My wife would lose her mind if I built something like this. Mine would have it dismantled before the paint dried. That's why this is genius. She created the situation, so she can't really complain about the solution. We were deep into the fourth quarter when the conversation took a more serious turn. My college roommate, who'd been quiet for most of the evening, finally spoke up. Can I ask you something? When's the last time you felt this relaxed in your own house? I thought about it seriously. Honestly, years. Maybe since we first moved in together. That's what I figured. You've been stressed every time I've seen you for the past 3 years. Tonight's the first time you seem like yourself. It's amazing what happens when you can exist without constant criticism, or when you can have friends over without getting grief about it later, or when you can watch TV without negotiating volume levels, or when you can eat what you want without commentary about your choices. The list kept growing, and with each edition, I realized how much of my personality I'd been suppressing just to keep peace. How many small compromises had added up to losing myself entirely. The thing is, my neighbor said, you're happier. Like, noticeably happier. More like the guy we used to know. Because I remember who I used to be. And you like that guy better than who you became? Without question. We were laughing about something ridiculous when the kitchen light came on above us. Through the garage window, I could see her moving around, probably making her evening tea and wondering about all the noise coming from below. Think she's checking up on us? My brother asked. Probably wondering why we're having so much fun. Must be killing her that she can't control what happens out here. She gave up that control when she kicked me out of the bedroom. Best decision she ever made, from where I'm sitting. The game was winding down when my college friend brought up the topic that had been hovering around the edges of our conversation all night. So what happens when she decides you've learned your lesson and demands you come back? That assumes I want to come back. You don't. Would you? If you had a space like this, where you could be yourself without apology, where your friends were welcome, where you could live according to your own standards, would you give that up to go back to walking on eggshells? The question hung in the air while everyone considered their own situations. Hell no, my neighbor said finally. Not a chance, agreed my brother. I'd fight to keep this setup. This is better than any marriage counseling session we've ever been to. That comment got everyone's attention. You've been to marriage counseling? I asked. 3 different therapists. All variations of the same theme. Learn to communicate better, compromise more, be more understanding of her needs. Let me guess. None of them suggested she might need to compromise or understand your needs. That would be correct. Funny how that works. We were cleaning up around 11 when she appeared in the doorway. Still in her pajamas, hair up, arms crossed. The universal pose of domestic disapproval. It's getting pretty late for a party. Just wrapping up, I said, not changing my tone or rushing the cleanup process. You've been pretty loud tonight. Have we? I hadn't noticed. The neighbors might complain. My actual neighbor laughed. I am the neighbors. No complaints here. She looked annoyed that her leverage had evaporated. Well, some of us have early morning commitments. The sound doesn't carry to the bedroom. That's why I installed proper insulation. It's just inconsiderate. To whom? She couldn't answer that without admitting she was the only one with a problem. After everyone left, I sat in my recliner with one last beer, thinking about the evening. The laughter, the honest conversation, the complete absence of tension or judgment. The way my friends had relaxed and been themselves because the space allowed for authenticity. More importantly, I thought about her reaction. The way she'd stood in the doorway like she was entitled to control what happened in my space. The assumption that my enjoyment was somehow inconsiderate to her comfort. But the biggest realization was this. I hadn't missed her presence at all. If anything, her brief appearance had been the only uncomfortable moment of the entire evening. For the first time since this whole thing started, I began to wonder if the problem wasn't just the bedroom arrangement. Maybe the problem was the entire relationship. Saturday morning came with the aggressive knock I'd been expecting. Not the polite tap from the night before, but the demanding rap of someone who'd spent all night working up to a confrontation. I was having my second cup of coffee, reading news on my tablet, completely comfortable in my space. The knock interrupted a perfectly peaceful morning. We need to talk. Now. I opened the door to find her fully dressed, makeup done, hair styled. She'd prepared for battle while I was still in my workout clothes, completely relaxed. Good morning to you too. This whole situation has gone way too far. This ridiculous garage conversion, the constant parties, the complete disregard for our marriage. I stepped aside and gestured for her to come in. Have a seat. Let's discuss it. She looked around the space with fresh eyes, taking in the quality of the furniture, the sophistication of the entertainment system, the obvious permanence of the setup. You've been planning this. This whole elaborate escape from our marriage. I've been working on organization, just like you suggested. This isn't organization. This is abandonment. I sat down in my recliner, completely calm. Abandonment of what exactly? Of our relationship. Of the life we built together. The life we built together involved me sleeping on the couch because I left a book on a nightstand. It was about respect for shared spaces. No, it was about control. The funny thing is, you gave me the perfect opportunity to realize how much control you'd been exercising over every aspect of my life. She sat on the edge of the sectional, clearly uncomfortable, but trying to maintain her position of authority. So your solution is to build a man cave and pretend we're not married? My solution is to create a space where I can exist without constant criticism, where my friends are welcome, where I can make decisions about my own comfort and happiness. Your friends were never unwelcome. Really? When's the last time I had anyone over without you finding reasons why it was inconvenient or inappropriate? That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. You made it clear that my social connections were less important than your comfort. And you think that's healthy for a marriage? I think it's healthier than the alternative we were living. She stood up, pacing the small space. This is ridiculous. You're a grown man hiding in a garage because you can't handle adult conversation. I'm a grown man who built his own space because his wife decided he wasn't worthy of sharing her bedroom. You're twisting this around. Am I? You said I couldn't sleep in our bedroom until I learned organization. I've learned it. I've organized my entire life exactly the way I wanted organized. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Then maybe you should have been more specific about what you actually wanted. She stopped pacing and looked directly at me. I want you to come back to the bedroom. I want us to work on our relationship like mature adults. And what does that look like? Me acknowledging that I overreacted and agreeing to respect the systems you've established. Yes. So nothing changes except I give up this space and go back to walking on eggshells? You were never walking on eggshells. When's the last time I watched a full game without commentary about noise levels? When's the last time I had friends over without scheduling it weeks in advance? When's the last time I made a decision about anything without running it past you first? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Marriage is about compromise, she said finally. You're right. But compromise means both people give something up. What have you compromised on? Name one thing. One decision where you changed your preference to accommodate mine. The silence stretched longer this time. I'm not controlling. I just have standards. Standards that everyone else has to meet, but you don't have to justify. That's not true. Then explain to me why leaving a book on a nightstand was grounds for banishment, but you spreading your stuff across both sides of the bed is perfectly acceptable. She sat back down, looking uncertain for the first time. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. No, you made it bigger when you kicked me out of my own bedroom. I just adapted to the situation you created. And your adaptation is to build a separate life? My adaptation is to build a life where I can be myself without constantly monitoring your approval levels. And you're happy now? I looked around my space. The coffee maker I'd chosen, the furniture that reflected my taste, the entertainment system that satisfied my preferences. Yeah, I am. Happier than you were with me? Happier than I was living according to your standards instead of my own. So that's it. You're just going to live in the garage forever. I'm going to live somewhere that I can be myself. Whether that's here or somewhere else remains to be seen. Somewhere else. This arrangement has made me realize some things about what I want from life and what I don't want. She stared at me for a long moment, processing the implications. You're talking about divorce. I'm talking about not living my life according to someone else's approval anymore. That's not a marriage. No, I agreed. It's not. 3 weeks after our confrontation, the dynamic in the house had shifted completely. She'd tried various approaches to regain control, guilt trips about the neighbors, comments about how strange our arrangement looked, suggestions that I was having some kind of midlife crisis. None of it worked because I was no longer the person who needed her approval to feel valid. I'd settled into a routine that actually worked for me. Morning coffee in my space, workout whenever I wanted, work calls without background commentary, and evening entertainment that reflected my actual preferences. The freedom was intoxicating. My social life had completely revived. Tuesday poker nights, weekend football gatherings, and casual weekday hangouts had become regular occurrences. All the friendships she'd gradually discouraged were flourishing again. You've got quite the setup here, my lawyer said when he stopped by Thursday evening. I'd called him earlier in the week to discuss some options. It served its purpose. And that purpose is helping me remember who I am when I'm not constantly accommodating someone else's demands. He looked around the space, taking in the obvious comfort and permanence of the arrangement. This is better than most studio apartments. You could live here indefinitely. That's what I'm realizing. But you're not planning to. No, I'm planning something more permanent. We talked through the logistics. The rental house was in both our names, but I've been covering the majority of the rent and utilities. My credit score was solid, my income stable. Finding my own place wouldn't be difficult. What about her? What about her? How's she handling the idea of you moving out completely? She doesn't know yet, but she's about to. Friday evening, I made the decision. I'd been putting off the conversation, but living in limbo wasn't fair to either of us. Time to finish what she'd started with her organization ultimatum. I found her in the kitchen, meal prepping for the week. Always so organized, always so controlled. We need to discuss our living situation. She looked up from her containers. Are you finally ready to come back to the bedroom? No, I'm ready to move out completely. The measuring cup in her hand froze halfway to the container. Move out. I've enjoyed our separation more than I expected. It's made me realize this relationship isn't working for either of us. That's ridiculous. We just need to find a compromise. We tried compromise. It looked like me giving up everything that made me comfortable while you maintained complete control over our shared environment. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. And I'm not interested in going back to that dynamic. She set down the measuring cup and faced me directly. So you're just going to leave? Over a bedroom arrangement. I'm leaving because I've rediscovered what it feels like to be myself. And I like that person too much to give him up again. This is insane. You're throwing away our marriage because you can't handle basic organization. I'm ending our marriage because it was never actually a partnership. It was me trying to meet your standards while you never considered mine. I can't believe you're serious about this. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'll be moving out at the end of the month. The color drained from her face. Over this. Over a stupid fight about a book. It was never about the book. It was about respect. And the fact that you still think this is about a book proves that you never understood the real problem. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I don't want to fix this. I want to live somewhere that I don't need fixing. You're making a huge mistake. The mistake was spending years thinking I needed to change myself to earn love from someone who never actually accepted who I was. She tried several more arguments: financial concerns, social embarrassment, the difficulty of starting over. But none of it resonated because I'd already tasted freedom, and it was better than anything she was offering. 2 weeks later, I signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my furniture choices, my rules about guests and noise levels, and where I could leave my books. Moving day was surprisingly easy. Most of my important stuff was already in the garage. The rest had never felt particularly important anyway. She watched from the doorway as I loaded the last of my things into my truck. This is really happening. This already happened. I'm just making it official. I never thought you'd actually leave. I never thought you'd give me a reason to realize how much happier I could be. What about us? There is no us. There's you, living according to your organizational systems, and me, living according to mine. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You meant to teach me a lesson about respecting your authority. The lesson just didn't go the way you planned. I closed the truck tailgate and looked back at the house we'd rented together. It had never really felt like home. Too many rules, too many restrictions, too much energy spent trying to be someone I wasn't. Good luck with your organization project, I said. 6 months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked exactly the same, perfectly put together, completely controlled. I looked different, relaxed, confident, comfortable in my own skin. How are you doing? She asked. Really well. You? Fine. Good. The house is very organized now. I'm sure it is. And quiet. That sounds perfect for you. She hesitated, then asked the question I could see coming. Do you ever regret it? I thought about my apartment, where I could watch sports at whatever volume I wanted. About my friends, who came over whenever they felt like it. About waking up every morning without immediately checking someone else's mood to determine how I was allowed to feel. Not even once. Really, best decision I ever made. Or rather, best decision you ever made for me. She looked confused. Your organization ultimatum. It gave me permission to organize my entire life the way I actually wanted it. So thanks for that. I walked away, leaving her standing in the produce section, finally understanding that some lessons can't be unlearned, and some students graduate to a better life than their teachers ever imagined.
뭐 이사 비용이라고 해봤자 뭐 한 돈 100만 원에다가 한 2, 30 하면은 한 그래도 한 130에서 150은 나올 것 같아. 130에서 150. 예. 이번에 이사 가면은 좀 이제 부지런히 방송하고 부지런히 돈 모아가지고 차근차근 올라가야지. 차근차근. 예. 이렇게 하다가 지금 얼마 없으면 20이면 돼. 2, 30이면 될 것 같아요. 사실 2, 30이면은 썩어 넘치지 사실상. 2, 30이면은. 짐이 얼마 없어서 책상을 들고 가는 게 문제인 거지. 딱히 뭐 다른 건 문제 없어. 책상 들고 가는 게 문제지. 책상이랑 장롱이 문제지. 그것만 제외하면은 크게 뭐 그거 될 거는 없다. 그리고 무조건 새 집 이사 가는데도 2층 안팎으로 구할 거라 가지고 이사하는 것도 최대한 여유롭게 좀 하려고. 여유롭게. 하루 만에 될 거. 하루 만에 좀 그러니까 그거지. 아침 방송 끝나고 점심에 딱 이제 용달 불러가지고 용달이랑 같이 해가지고 이사 딱 하고 그 다음에 이제 저녁에 딱 이제 새 집 딱 공개하고 점심에 좀 정리 좀 하고 그런 느낌으로 갈 것 같아요. 이사할 때.